DJT, we're lucky enough to have worked in some of the most iconic buildings in Liverpool. And we can film our videos in some of the best locations. For example, on the roof of the Liver building on a wonderful sunny day. Or in the stands at Liverpool when the stadium's empty. Or in the most historic boardroom in Liverpool. Or in one of the amazing boxes at Anfield. But this time we've decided to do our filming at here at the DJT Centre. So the revised standards for BS7671, the draft publication by the BSI, was closed in November 2024, and we've now had an opportunity to have a look at what the potential changes are going to be to the new sets of regulations, and that's what this video is going to be about.
Yeah, there's going to be different amendments being made. Before we go into them, just worth pointing out, already in existence on page 18, there's some references to words such as shall, should, may, can, that you really need already to get to grips with, because they're going to be reiterated in the new set of regulations as well. There's going to be some changes in definitions in terms of HRB, which already is defined in chapter 42, but they're going to move that definition into part 2 definitions. It's going to stand for a high risk building. It's going to be a building greater than 18 metres or 6 stories in height. They're going to introduce a new definition for functional equipotential bonding, and protective neutral bonding, PNB, is going to be involved as well. They've already moved a little bit towards that in chapter 41, but not in terms of a definition. So these are things to look out for in the new regulations.
Absolutely. Part 3, there's no particularly critical changes that have been highlighted in the draft publication. And part 4, there are some quite sizable amendments with regards to such areas as firefighting shafts. Andy?
Yeah, it's going to state clearly that the firefighting shaft, or a firefighting shaft, is not there to be simply defined by the electrical engineer. There's got to be the involvement of a fire engineer as well to determine what that is. And it's going to reiterate something we already know, but it's going to make this absolutely clear that things that are plugged into the fixed wiring do not fall under the scope of BS7671. I know we know that, but it's going to make that crystal clear. Okay. Also, there's a regulation 52110-202, which is talking about wiring systems in buildings to protect against fire. It's going to make that absolutely clear that they are concerned about the general collapse of the wiring system in that situation and the prevention of it to impede firefighters, not the functionality of the wiring system.
So still in part 5, it's looking highly likely there'll be a new table inserted in the regs for cables buried in the fabric of the building, in the wall, where the zones sit. Andy and I discussed this earlier, and there's a possibility that they'll actually take that table out of the on-site guide.
Yeah, I think they just want to make it really clear.
Yeah.
It's a bit wordy at the moment, but yeah.
Already exists, so they're just going to do a riff on that. Also in 53133, they want to clarify that RCDs wired in series should be correctly selected for the loads in place, and the example would be no type A or type B circuit breakers down and RCDs downstream from a type AC. I mean, I always say that younger electricians won't remember that when RCDs, residual devices, first came out, there was only one type, and that's when there was nuisance tripping and split load boards in order to overcome the nuisance tripping and only have circuit breakers where there was a chance of that. But it's just another example of technology and how fast it advances, and now there are a number of types of RCDs.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at circuit breakers, no one batters an eyelid when you talk about B, C and D for circuit breakers, but now if you look at RCDs, we've got AC, A, F, B, there's like a pyramid as well of the functions they perform. And in really simple terms, AC is at the bottom of that pyramid because it will only deal with AC leakage, and as you move up the pyramid, type A's will do everything an AC does and a little bit of DC, and as you go up the pyramid towards B, which is at the top, you've got different types of DC they'll deal with, sometimes pulse, sometimes solid, different frequencies for AC, but they're already explained in the regs on page 156. If you want to get to grips with the differences, you can look right now.
And if you see an S?
Yeah, that's a time delay on any RCD, the facility to include a time delay before it trips.
So I think this is going to be a much clearer in 531 in these new amended regulations. 545 is a new section which is going to deal with communication technology equipment, which is entering a lot more into the realms of electrical installations now. We were always familiar with functional alerts. For a long time they were cream and then they became pink. They're going to remain pink. But there's going to be more detail on the cross-sectional areas of these and how you've got to test them for continuity, because they do form part of the electrical installation now under the new amendments.
Yeah, there's another one as well in chapter 57. They're going to include a section on stationary secondary batteries. Now you might think, well, aren't they already covered? But this has nothing to do with backup battery supplies. It's nothing to do with UPSs. This is more to do with the likes of power walls, where you might have solar PV installations in commercial and even domestic buildings. We've got a wall of batteries, so they're going to bring in a special section dealing with that. It'll be interesting. I haven't seen it. I don't know what it's going to include, but it'll be quite interesting.
So one of the big changes in part 6 that seems to be getting discussed on the forums quite a lot is that FIs will no longer constitute an unsatisfactory when they're entered onto an EICR. In the past, if you put an FI in, what it was actually stating was that there's further investigation required for something that could potentially be dangerous, and that would deem it to be unsatisfactory. But now they're stating that you can enter FIs and still end up with a satisfactory grade. Obviously, if there's C1s or C2s on there, it becomes unsatisfactory anyway, but an FI doesn't constitute that on its own. Part 7?
Yeah, I'll move into the special locations. 710 medical locations, they're expecting reasonably significant changes there. Apparently they're trying to bring the whole thing in line with Senilec, so there will be a lot of changes. One specific change there is there's a requirement at the moment for supplementary bonding to be measured to below 0.2 ohms between different elements of the building. They're going to introduce a certificate for that, so it's proven to have taken place. Another change, although it's outside special locations, is in Part 8. They're introducing a new chapter, 81, because currently Part 8 begins in 82. But 81 is going to be to do with the functional requirements for energy efficiency, which right now is covered in Appendix 17. But they're going to remove Appendix 17 and take what they want into Chapter 81 as a new beginning to Part 8. So quite interesting.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the appendix there, just to finish. On the actual regs themselves. Appendix 4, obviously there's going to be some changes because of the data with regards to the tables that they've got in Appendix 4. Appendix 6, this EICR, they're making it very clear that the notes for the person producing the report, it's going to be a situation where that needs to be presented to the customer. So they're already on the back of a lot of certificates. This isn't a big change, but it's going to state in there that the notes for the person producing the report on an EICR or an EIC should be presented to the customer. And Appendix 13 is the bit that's got guidance with regards to approved document B, and that's talking about the preparation with the fire engineer when you're deciding on the cable protection for escape routes. So there will be some changes to the appendices, and not only because of this additional 81 chapter that's in there.
Yeah, it all sounds as though it's going to be a bit interesting, doesn't it?
It will.
Yeah.
Okay, so this video has been a lot shorter than the last one that was on the website, but this is a preliminary video leading up to the changes in BS7671, and in 2026, when the new book comes out, we will definitely do a video on that because the changes will be there in black and white. Now, it's worth noting that the regs aren't going to change the way they're set out. So part 1 is scope, part 2 is definitions, part 3 assessment of general characteristics, part 4 safety, part 5 selection and erection of equipment, 6 will still be testing, and part 7 will be special locations, with part 8 will still have your prosumers in there as well, but there'll be an additional chapter added, 81. So in essence, it will remain the same, parts 1 to part 8, and then your appendices to follow.
What about the colour?
Okay, well we've got all we can say is that the regs in 1991, the 16th edition came out. That was the first time the regs got their BS number. Obviously that changed to the 17th edition, and now we're in the 18th edition. And if you actually follow the colour changes over the years, the brown book is the one that's currently in place, and there's been yellow books, there's been blue books. But if it's going to follow the same,
red has always followed brown, hasn't it?
Yeah, this is the last time there was a red book out there, which was 2008. It's going to be obviously thicker than this with more pages, but it's looking highly likely it's going to be a red book. The question we get asked a lot is, if there's an amendment to the regs made, do people have to take the qualification again? I would suggest that if the amendments are slotted into the regs as additional pages, so the brown book has had some amendments that have been added to it, then you generally don't need to take the qualification again. But when the book colour changes, a lot of the time governing bodies, the likes of the NIC, NAPIT, the ECA, etc., even with regards to grading on your JIB card, they could state that they want you to be qualified to the latest edition of BS7671, which in this case will be Amendment 4. And because our industry likes to keep things basic, they'll probably say, are you qualified to the red book?
But that's also predominantly due to the fact the layout's going to change.
Yeah.
There's going to be new chapters, and the regs exam is about understanding the layout and understanding where to find things, so yeah, you will need it.
Absolutely.
The one thing for sure is don't bury your head in the sand, embrace these changes. Don't ignore them, you can't ignore them.